Across that green fence line there, we've entered the southern boundary. Western boundary is all of Canyon Creek all the way down to the confluence of the John Day River. Northern boundary is essentially that fence line behind those new houses on 3rd Street there. And then Canton Street is our eastern boundary. But how in the world do we get to Chinatown in Grant County, Oregon? Well, that all starts in 1861 when gold was discovered at a place called Auburn, Oregon, over in Baker County. That following year of 1862, men on their way to the gold fields will camp along this very creek just 5 miles south of us, where they'll pan for color, discover gold in Canyon Creek at the base of Canyon Mountain, and the boom town of Canyon City, Oregon springs to life. By the end of the year 1862, Canyon City will have its very own Chinatown, located on a street called China Alley was its main street. And in 1870, we see Canyon City on the U.S. Census record for the first time. Right next to it is this mysterious new location called John Day Precinct. John Day Precinct from 1870 to 1900 is defined as everything north of Canyon City's Chinatown, all the way to the middle fork of the John Day River, so right near modern Ritter today. And from west to east, everything just east of the community of Dayville to everything just west of the community of Prairie Diggings, Prairie City as we call it today. That John Day Precinct in 1870 boasted a population of 85 individuals as being born in China, and of them, 41 lived on this one street that starts essentially where those two boulders are next to the building, goes all the way to that fence line. By 1880, the John Day Precinct population boasts 357 souls as being born in China, and of those, 195 are living in dwellings on that one street here to John Day Precinct. By 1890, we have no idea what the census looks like anywhere in America, as they all went up in smoke in 1921. Fortunately for our purposes, some enterprising soul stood near to where we are and snapped this photograph prior to 1893. We call this John Day Precinct Chinatown circa 1890. So while we don't know how many people were here, we know what it looked like. And interestingly enough, one and only one building from this photograph has survived. Funny enough, it was the first building ever built featured in this photograph. That building was built not because of Chinatown, but because of that dirt road right there. In the 1860s, that dirt road that passed by the building was known as the Dalles Military Wagon Road, carrying men and supplies from Fort Boise at the Oregon-Idaho border to the Columbia River at the Dalles, Oregon. Men operating businesses in Canyon City needed a spot to ship and receive goods, and so in 1865, they built that stone and timber building right along that dirt road. But by 1871, there's a proper freight line running from downtown Canyon City to the Dalles. No longer need the shipping and receiving storehouse here. And in the newspapers in 1871, we see this building now being leased for the first time by a Chinese merchant who's named his mercantile Kam Wah Chung Company for the first time. By 1879, a different group of Chinese merchants are leasing and operating Kam Wah Chung Company. When the Kelly family of Canyon City will quit their claim to this property, and that quitclaim deed, discover they have similar backgrounds, similar upbringings, come from a similar region in southern China, and they're each young men in their 20s, each with a wife and children back home in China, families that they will never see again in their mortal lifetimes. These two men will solidify their partnership in 1888 when they purchased Kam Wah Chung Company, the building and the business. It will then become their home and business headquarters for the next just over half century. Lung On and Doc Hay were helpmates and roommates, partners in many businesses over the years, as we'll see. And Lung On runs a variety of businesses, has a large and vast business portfolio. One of those businesses is translation services. He's fluent in English, can read, write, and speak it, and he will charge people to pay him to translate and negotiate business contracts, both verbal and written, as well as personal documents, immigration paperwork, a variety of things. The one person he doesn't charge translation services, though, over the years, it seems, is Doc Hay. Doc Hay is not fluent in English, and he has bad eyesight. Could be that he had bad eyesight or that he was a doctor, but he also has bad handwriting. Over the years, that eyesight gets worse, his handwriting gets worse, and he starts to write in abbreviations or shorthand. Oh, and I buried the lead. He's not writing in English. He's not even writing in standard Chinese script. He's writing in 19th century Cantonese script, and eventually Doc Hay 19th century Cantonese script shorthand. That is one of the ways we're still learning more about these two men and this business. The story hasn't been fully written or translated or even understood at this point. Of the 20,000 documents that have been pulled from the building, only 10,000 were in English. The rest are in that 19th century Cantonese script. As of today, only under 12% of those have been translated even loosely into English. So this is an ongoing research project as well. Well, Doc Hay is going to run into a bit of a problem. In 1940, his roommate and helpmate will pass away. Now he doesn't have his translator or somebody to help him get around the old Kam Wah Chung building, and thankfully for him, he has a nephew over in Idaho, Dr. Bob Wah, with his own medical practice and family. He'll make the decision to remove that family and business here to John Day in 1942 to come help his old uncle out. Doc Hay wanted to build the Wah family a proper home here to Chinatown, but in 1942, lumber and labor are scarce, so that building was never built. Dr. Wah is able to purchase from the Geisler family the lot behind the fence here, and then he'll truck in the big old Bob Wah house and have it drop there on top, where he will live until 1966 when he passes away. His second wife will pass away there in 1968. Well, it's a good thing for Doc Hay that the Wah family was living right across the street. In 1948, he'll slip, fall, bust a hip, have to be taken to Portland to receive treatment, and the Wah family is going to help get him there. They're also going to help him lock up and secure the building, shutter all the windows and doors, turn off the lights, prepare Kam Wah Chung and company as if Doc Hay was going away on any other trip, with the full intention of coming back to John Day. Unfortunately, Doc Hay will end up in a nursing home and pass away of pneumonia in 1952. And when he does, his last will and testament leaves this building and all of Chinatown, his estate, to his son who survived in China. However, Oregon state law of 1923 says no non-U.S. citizen can inherit an estate. So all of this is to become property of the U.S. federal government. Well, Dr. Wah is still living across the street here, and he's not okay with that. So he sues the state of Oregon and winds up in the U.S. Court of Appeals, where he'll be able to prove that he's a naturalized U.S. citizen, and as Doc Hay's nephew, he is the rightful heir to his uncle's estate. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to agree with Dr. Wah, and they're going to award him his uncle's estate. And then in 1955, the city of John Day is going to come knocking to the front door there. They want to make a deal with Dr. Wah. They want to buy up old Chinatown so they can build a city park and a public swimming pool. So Dr. Wah negotiates with the city and agrees to be paid over the course of the next 3 years a whopping sum of $5,000 so the city can build their park, they can build their swimming pool, but please reserve the old stone building as a museum to stand testimony to the Chinese experience of the gold rush of Eastern Oregon. Well, between 1958 and 1968, the city builds and opens their public park. They build and open the old Gleason Pool, but by 1968 it seems they forgot what they were supposed to do with the stone building. That's when the city council met to discuss tearing down the old building to improve the park and pool area. One councilman will speak up and say, hey, hold on a minute, it's been 10 years. Let's see if we can find out who owns the building, see if they got a key, and let's go see if anything's even inside. Well, the council was quickly informed that as of 1958, the city owned the building and they had a key. So that councilman, Gordon Glass, was able to go inside in 1968, presumably the first one to do so in 20 years, to see if anything was in there. And he decided after that visit that, hey guys, we should clean this up and turn it into a museum. Dr. Wah had passed away 2 years previously, but I imagine his family was saying, yeah, our dad thought that was a great idea a decade ago when he made the deal with you guys. What's taking so long? The city will enter into an agreement with the state. The site will be restored, rehabbed, cataloged, cleaned up, and prepared for tours at the now Kam Wah Chung and Company Museum. The city will oversee those tours and collections and building maintenance on a 99-year lease. For a variety of reasons, that lease was not seen all the way through, and in 2004, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department comes in and takes over management of collections, building, and guest experience at the now Kam Wah Chung State Heritage Site. And as of 20 and 22, the state was able to reacquire from the city the old park, the site of the old swimming pool, reuniting Chinatown with her building once again. You'll notice the Gleason Pool has been since filled in anticipation of breaking ground on a new year-round Kam Wah Chung State Heritage Site Interpretive Center that, if everything goes according to plan, will hopefully have a grand opening in the celebratory year of 20 and 26, so even we here in John Day can be part of America's 250th birthday celebration. Kam Wah Chung, if it's used informally or in personal documents, is often translated as the golden flower of prosperity. However, for our purposes, I prefer to use the business document translation. In formal writings and in business transactions, Kam Wah Chung gets translated as a golden Chinese outpost. So I'll invite you all to take the first path up to the front door of the outpost here. I'm going to go in the back, turn the lights, and let you in. Welcome to the main room of Kam Wah Chung. This room's used many ways over every single day. First part of the day, it seemed Doc Hay would use it as his waiting room, where he'd quickly escort his patients to the examination room. Don't worry, don't have to go far. It's that big red chair in the corner there. Doc Hay would have you take a seat, put your wrist up on a satin pillow there to the side of the chair, where he's going to be able to take your pulse. Doc Hay is a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner of a thing called pulse diagnosis, and we've learned through modern research and modern practitioners that it appears Doc Hay was quite gifted and skilled in his ability in pulse diagnosis. He could have at least identified 27 individual pulses. The pulse information that he takes from you is going to inform him on what ails you and how best he can treat you. He's going to do that by stepping into his apothecary here, where he has at his disposal 560 individual ingredients. He will be able to treat you topically through a poultice or salve. Don't go too far, it'll set up the alarms. Otherwise, he can make up a formula that you'll take home and prepare like a tea or a soup. And those they are, where they're from, and in a few instances, the formulas that Doc Hay prescribed and the ailments he prescribed them for. Most of the work here is being done by the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine. They maintain an online archive that as they identify those ingredients, they have the collections photo from our collection, then they have the description of what the item is, whether it's plant, animal, or insect material, and how it's traditionally used in traditional Chinese medicine historically and even today, and then where they can, where Doc Hay has used it in his records, and then we'll have a link to some of the translated formulas where those ingredients are used. When Doc has seen his patients and prescribed that formula for treatment for you to go home and brew up on your stove, he will retire each and every day to his bedroom there, off the main room there. That's where Doc would reside from 1888 all the way till he leaves in 1948. If you came across that collection of uncashed checks there to the interpretive center, a variety of them came out of that black trunk underneath his mattress there. Keep in mind, while Doc Hay may have retired for the day, this main room where we are is right off of his bedroom, and it's right next to the one and only way in and out of the building prior to 1914, that front door that we came in. And just because Doc has retired, the room is definitely not retired, as his roommate Long On will put this room to work till the wee hours of the morning. He's involved in a variety of businesses, and he's way more than Doc Hay's sidekick and just the shopkeep. It seems his vast business portfolio, his number one earning business over the years, was Long On was essentially the first Grant County Workforce Oregon. He's a labor boss. He can connect you to work and a place to live. If you're immigrating from China like him, he can help you do that paperwork from this side of the ocean to maybe get you here a little bit faster. But once you're here, he'll help you find work, and he doesn't care if you come overseas from China or the other popular location, Portugal. He'll help you all find work, and he doesn't matter to him if you come from California or even Iowa. He'll help you find work as well, as each person he finds a job in whatever industry they're hired into, as long as they maintain that employment. Every time they get paid, he gets a cut. So it's a pretty steady stream of income. He will run the mercantile from 1888 all the way till his death in 1940. And prior to 1900, his mercantile is mainly an international import business. We'll see empty boxes there to the storeroom that still contain those original stamps from Hong Kong, as they were shipped 4 weeks by sea to San Francisco, 2 weeks by land here to John Day, and then who knows, maybe half a day before he can get them out on the shelves and sold to you. Long On will shift as the population moves on to follow industry. After 1900, most of the folks that are coming here to Kam Wah Chung are domestic in nature. Those domestic customers now require domestic products, so he imports things like General Mills and Folgers, a variety of alcohols and canned goods you can still buy at the grocery stores today. Theirs just has a much better sale by date than what's left here. Do not be concerned about the alcohol. Going back to 1890, Long On maintains a Grant County liquor license to the shelf there that allows him to legally sell alcohol out of the building. And that, interesting enough, is only his number 2 selling item over the years. His number 1 seller is everything to the north wall here, all those tobacco products. Tobacco's number 1, alcohol's number 2, and that's because in the evening this room is no longer at rest. Long On's putting it in play. He's going to bring out the big red table, set it up. He's going to turn on those Chinese opera records that hang to the walls of the interpretive center on the gramophone, and he's going to sell all those drinks and smokes to the men sitting around the big red table enjoying the music. When Long On opens up the big red box that he calls the donation box, the bank for all the games of chance, things like Fantan and dominoes, Various card games and dice games seem to have been popular as well. And while all that drinking, smoking, and gambling and carrying on is happening, remember Doc Hayes just on the other side of that flimsy door there, resting for the day. The most intriguing thing about the mercantile, perhaps, though, has nothing to do with commerce or Longon. It's the altar elements there to that back or west wall of the building, including those 4 paper lanterns in front. Those are not original to the building. Those came out of a building that was once at the end of the main street here, near to where the pool area is today. This was the Shui Jingbo Temple. Interesting for a couple of different reasons. That building would burn in 1927. The altar elements were saved here to Kam Wah Chung. The big sign over the building and the 2 carved couplets on either side are saved and hang to the wall of the interpretive center. Sui Jingbo, or Duke Sui Jing, was a man who lived in 12th century China. He was a member of the Chen clan, or the Chen family, and in life he's known as a defender against bandits. Typically, however, in mainland China, you only ever find small tributes or altars to Sui Jingbo in Chen family homes. In the 19th century gold rush American West, he gets treated completely differently, and we believe that had to do with his deification. Duke Sui Jing is made a deity in the Taoist faith in 1844, right at the beginning of westward expansion. When he's deified, the Taoists say that he's no longer just a defender against bandits as he had been in life, but now as a deity, he's a defender against epidemics. In Gold Rush American West, everybody's afraid of their Wells Fargo stagecoach getting robbed by bandits, and the next morning waking up with influenza, the plague, tuberculosis, a variety of other outbreaks. So now there's a deity you can bring offerings to that will defend you against all those things. And so Sui Jingbo gets these standalone temple structures built throughout Gold Rush American West. Of the ones that were built in the 19th century, only 6 remain today: Oroville, California; Boise, Idaho; Portland, Oregon; Seattle, Washington; and John Day, Oregon. And that's where the little bit of dumb luck that we even get to have this conversation right now comes into play. Where we stand currently is the inside of that shipping and receiving storehouse built in 1865 along a wagon road in Grant County, Oregon, and not, let's say, Tillamook County, Oregon. That shipping and receiving storehouse would by happenstance become the home of Longon and Doc Hay. In 1927, the temple up the street would burn, and by chance, this would be the place where all that stuff would come and sit. And then in 1948, Doc Hay will slip and fall and leave town. For the next 20 years, this remains unoccupied. And because all the windows and doors are shuttered and lights are turned out, where we stand for that 20 years remains cool, dark, and most importantly, dry. So everything in here has been able to preserve in place, right down to those paper lanterns. Those are not silk flowers, but all paper, last of which delivered from Hong Kong to John Day in 1916. And that also includes all the citrus fruits you see at each of the altars. Those were last left in 1948, presumably by Doc, and they too have shriveled up and preserved in place. Not plastic, not reproduction. If it's in this building, it's because it was here in 1968, was cleaned and cataloged and put back and put on display for your viewing pleasure. No, things are not just as Doc had left them in 1948. We put them back so that you, the guests, can enjoy them. If we only put out one calendar, that's many more calendars that would sit back in collections that you would never get to see. I do have a little bit of a beef with Ryder Brothers, as they're still in business, and yet we advertise for free for them all these many years later. We're going to make our way here to the kitchen and bunkhouse. Just watch your head on this door frame. Yeah. The kitchen ends up being my favorite room, Not because I don't miss meals, I don't, but because I've done lots of living history around a stove just like that one. Unfortunately, I didn't have the privilege of working sites where Lung On and Doc Hay had some say. They come in 1888 and they quickly pay for some upgrades in here. They have a water well dug and install a hand pump, making this the first indoor plumbing in all of John Day. So now you can cook and clean without hauling water. And then they put that little square to space to the floor there. That square on the floor is the only solid floor space in the entire building. That is the top of a beam or a post that's been firmly planted in the ground and now can receive that chopping block that they even put a water pail handle on. You put that to the top of the beam or post and you can chop away at all the stove wood and kindling you need without even having to haul wood to your stove. And more than half your workout to cook and clean around a stove like this is just hauling water and wood for cooking and cleaning. They eliminated all of that. This kitchen wouldn't just serve Doc Hay and Lung On, it would also serve Lung On's bunkhouse guests. He maintains a bunkhouse here, 4 mattresses per bunk, or one mattress per bed, 4 total. 4 spaces per bed, 5 cents a night for a total of 16 overnight guests. If he had been greedy like East Coast tavern keepers, he would have charged 6 to 8 spaces per bed. We believe if there was space available, he would take up a bed space at night prior to 1914. If not, he's sleeping in that storeroom back there in his, just off the Mercantile. Also prior to 1914, he's conducting business, ledger work, things of that nature here to the office in the corner. I will direct everybody's attention to this framed and matted black and white photograph of the First National Bank of Portland, Oregon that hangs over that desk. That matted frame, you'll note at the bottom, is actually addressed to Lung On and presumably signed by the white guys in charge of that bank at one time, a prominent bank building in downtown Portland. We thought it curious over the years, because you were probably taught like me in the 20th century in America, men like Lung On would be discouraged from participating in business and banking. Yet here is a Chinese merchant of John Day, Oregon, receiving his own signed copy, a framed photo of the First National Bank of Portland, Oregon. How interesting is that? When in 2018, when those 20,000 documents of ours were digitized and loaded on to the internet, one of our rangers noticed that they just scanned and uploaded a letter that was signed by the First National Bank of Portland president. And this one had a date, unlike the photograph. It was dated 1937 and read, "Dear Lung On, I wish to thank you for loaning us the money to help keep our bank opened." And we don't know how much that loan was for. We haven't found a receipt of payment yet. But we do know enough that 1937 meant his loan, a Chinese merchant of John Day, Oregon, kept the First National Bank of Portland open at the end of the Great Depression. He would be involved in banking in many banks across the east side of the Cascade Mountain Range in both Oregon and Washington. And he would help save another bank here locally. Prior to the year 1929, we had 2 banks in the Canyon region here. After the stock market crash and run on banks, where banks closed all across America, we were left with only 1 bank. That Grant County Bank you saw calendars of in the other room survives because 3 local men, Lung On, Doc Hay, and a prominent rancher by the name of Herman Oliver, agree together that they will not close their accounts or make a run on the bank. That bank is able to remain solvent and in business for many years to come because of that decision. However, before all the banking chaos in America, Lung On would withdraw some money from at least 1 bank account, and I can imagine it's to the delight of Doc Hay. He is going to use that money he withdrew to build a new addition to Kam Wah Chung and Company. He's going to build 2 new rooms. So come on into Lung On's new bedroom. you'll notice there's a lot less stuff in Lung On's bedroom, and the acoustics are a little bit different. All that has to do with the construction. This bedroom and new storeroom that he built are built as a lean-to onto the original stone and timber building. Even had to take out some of the rattlesnake tough stone here to build a pass-through so Lung On could come and go from the bunkhouse and could sneak in some of the knob and tube wiring so he'd have some electric lighting in here. Unfortunately for him, though, this being a lean-to meant we still fight moisture damage to this day. That moisture damage over that 20 years that this building sits vacant results in a lot of rot and mold damage. So all the stuff, including the floor, had to be removed from this room. But the window, the walls, and even that door there are original to that 1914 construction. That door is probably what Doc is most delighted about, as it's now Lung On's own private entrance and exit in the complete opposite corner of the building from where Doc resides. He was a man about town. Newspaper articles as far away as Portland will talk about Lung On being constantly seen to the main street, coming and going amongst his neighbors at all times. He doesn't just run a gambling den, he makes sure to run his own lottery where he prints his own lottery tickets. You can come here and enjoy that. He would use his businesses to invest in the Grant County Agricultural Society, who in 1909 would build just 2 blocks over on the former Bradford Trowbridge Ranch, the Grant County Fairgrounds. The only reason they built it was to build a proper horse racing track for horse races. Lung On loved the ponies. He'd buy his own thoroughbreds and see them race all over the Pacific Northwest. He would hire his own jockeys, hire his own trainers and caretakers, and buy up pasture land to keep those horses happy and healthy and ready to go for the next race. He would, over the years, invest as an owner outright or co-owner in a variety of businesses throughout Eastern Oregon and Washington, and that, of course, requires lots and lots of employees. So he made sure to buy up plenty of rental properties throughout the Pacific Northwest to keep those folks housed, and he could serve as their landlord. He would, in 1921, invest in a business that became the very first of its kind anywhere east of the Cascade Mountains when he opens the very first automobile dealership east of those Cascades, and then realizes, I can't just sell you a car, I gotta make your car go, so he opened the first gas station east of the Cascades as well. He then quickly realized that gassed you up and sent you out in a new car on old wagon roads, so you're going to need tire repair, engine work, and maintenance. So he and his partner C.L. Dickey will build in 1921 what they called the Tourist Garage at the southeast corner of our one and only stoplight where Lynn's Pharmacy stands today. That was once home in 1921 to Lung On's Tourist Garage, where you could buy, sell, rent, lease a car, gas it up, have oil change, engine work, and tire repair done. Just keep in mind, everybody from Grant County he hired to work there had absolutely no experience with gasoline engines, and they didn't know anything about wood and rubber tires on these newfangled cars. They're learning on the fly, and they must have done a really good job. It only took 6 years until the summer of 1927 when Lung On's Tourist Garage and its owner, the Chinese merchant of John Day, gained national attention. So much so that today's oldest automotive trend magazine, Motor Age magazine, would send a reporter to John Day to meet Lung On and discuss this new nationally known tourist garage. We learned that perhaps to Lung On of John Day, Oregon goes the distinction of being the only Chinese automotive merchant in the whole of America, and that he's a philanthropist and a man of liberal instinct and charitable nature, so much so that at the beginning of the Great Depression, he's starting to help his neighbors who are down on their luck financially. It said he's helped those, the names of which to be amongst at least a legion. So, a numerous amount. He's also got a reputation of covering the debts and promissory notes of his neighbors, who by 1927, Doc Hay is the only neighbor that looks like him. The rest of those neighbors, they all look like me. There are also neighbors who between 1900 and 1910 will appear in the Grant County News and the Blue Mountain Eagle newspapers, doing everything in their power to get either man or both men arrested, either man or both men fined, and convince both men it's time to quit your business and leave the county. Usually those articles will end with the phrase something to the effect of, and we're convinced after this most recent incident that they will quit their business by morning and be gone from Grant County. However, 17 or 27 years later, whichever one you're comparing it to, Long On's business, his new one, has gained national attention in the form of Motor Age magazine being here, and his roommate Doc Hay is no slouch. His patient list by 1927 stretches from Massachusetts all the way to California and everywhere in between. So they're both basically doing nationally recognized business in John Day, Oregon, headquartered and living here at Kam Wah Chung. Well, Motor Age wants to know, Long On, why are you helping these white guys who haven't always been so kind to you? He says, when I endorsed a note recently for some $2,400 for a friend to purchase a car, I thought he was reliable, but afterwards had to pay $1,300 of the amount myself. I decided then that my lesson was now complete. I will endorse no more notes for anybody, but I will continue to help people when and where I think they are deserving, because I feel better when I do that sort of thing. Well, his charitable nature and his entrepreneurial spirit and his automobiles will come in handy for him and his neighbors for about 11 years, where I like to think America just lost its mind. In 1922, we decided life isn't miserable enough. We're going to band together to change the United States Constitution to ban and prohibit the sale and use of alcohol. Well, Long On, he's got cars and a charitable nature, and he doesn't want his neighbors to suffer. So for the next 11 years, he will run a bootleg bourbon whiskey operation throughout the region. What's interesting is 11 years later, in 1933, Americans come to their senses, decide we're depressed enough as it is, give us back our alcohol. We repeal that constitutional amendment, and Long On goes right back to maintaining that liquor license, which enabled him to legally sell alcohol out of Kam Wah Chung until his death in 1940. However, we learned during the renovations of the 1970s that it appears even Long On forgot about his bootleg bourbon whiskey days, as a variety of those sealed bourbon bottles will be found in the hidey holes of the floors, walls, and ceilings of Kam Wah Chung. We today have 33 sealed bottles left in our collection. A few are on display there to the Interpretive Center. And we understand there was a variety more that was actually found, but it depends on who's doing the telling how much more. We know the men that found some imbibed on a few more were given to councilmen as a gift to say thank you for saving the old building as a museum, and then a few more were auctioned off at $1,000 a bottle to help pay for the renovations. So even us right now are benefiting from the charitable bootleg bourbon whiskey of Long On by standing on this new renovated floor. When these men pass away, both men's last will and testament, they want their fortunes or their estates to be inherited by their families back in those villages in China. Unfortunately, we know through documentation, for a variety of reasons, that didn't happen. But unique to these men, they didn't want their bodies returned with their fortunes. They wanted their bodies to be buried here in their new home of John Day, Oregon. These men are the only two Chinese immigrants during the Gold Rush era to be buried at Rest Lawn Cemetery here in John Day up on Valley View Drive. There's still a lot more we can learn from about these men's operations here as we translate more documents and uncover stories in old newspapers that are now being made more readily available to us. Over time, I think those things are important, but I think the experience we had today and why we were able to have it will tell us more about these two men and their operation and what they meant to the community, the region, and beyond. When you consider Long On last sold a bit of candy here in 1940, Doc Hay last saw a patient sometime in the mid-1940s, and that building we left from today, That's the old middle school cafeteria and band room. In the 1960s, while this room had been vacant for nearly 20 years, the kids attending school, passing by here twice a day, perhaps playing hooky in the neighborhood, have no first-hand knowledge of either one of these men. The only thing they know about these men in this building is the stories their grandpa told them about buying candy from Long On, or the stories their grandma taught them about coming as a scared little girl with her mom to see the doc and then becoming a lifelong patient. And whatever your grandparents told you in the 60s, it was enough to keep you and your mates from busting down that 1914 door, busting out that 1914 glass window, and ransacking the place and taking all the stuff that we just saw. I think that says everything that we'll probably never learn about these two men from any translated document. The fact that we're even able to do this today. I do thank you guys for joining me. I am going to let you out this door, and then I'll turn off the lights and join you in the front there. If you got to go, feel free to go. I'm going to make my way back to the Interpretive Center. You're welcome to go there yourselves or go there with me.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.